We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. Joining us throughout this hour is my colleague Jim Sciutto in Ukraine. And right now, here is where we are. A democratic nation, a sovereign country, is under attack, being invaded as we speak. Ukraine now facing a full-scale assault from Russia. Here's the NATO Secretary General's ominous words this morning.
Peace in our continent has been shattered. We now have war in Europe on a scale and of a type we thought belonged to history.
A former U.S. ambassador to Russia putting it this way: this is the largest conventional war in Europe since 1939. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordering a large-scale military invasion across pretty much all of Ukraine. Explosions have been seen, heard, and reported in at least 16 locations throughout Ukraine, including the capital of Kyiv. New images are coming in by the minute of the damage caused by the attacks. Also, massive traffic jams we're seeing in the capital as people are trying to flee. And Clarissa Ward showing us hundreds of people now packing a subway station turned bomb shelter, conjuring images of World War II. Ukraine says more than 40 soldiers and at least 10 civilians have already been killed in the fighting. This morning, President Biden met with G7 leaders to discuss how to respond to all of this. And next hour, the president will be addressing the nation and the world, and we will bring that to you live. We are watching history unfold. CNN correspondents are covering every angle stationed throughout Ukraine, Russia, and Washington. Let's get to my colleague, Jim Sciutto. He's live in western Ukraine, in the western part of Ukraine. Jim, this has been remarkable to watch unfold, and you've been up from the wee hours of the morning.
It's remarkable, it's harrowing, it's sad, and we now know the aerial assault extends the length and breadth of this country, from here in Lviv, attacks outside the city, all the way to Kharkiv in the northeast, to the south, Mariupol, north by the capital, Kyiv. It's a deadly assault already, and it continues on the ground tonight. CNN's Sam Kiley, he's live on the other side of the country, in the city of Kharkiv, not far from the Russian border. And Sam, we've seen the rockets headed your way, artillery. We've also seen tanks driving towards where you are. Tell us what you're seeing.
Well, just in the last few minutes, Jim, there's been a distant sort of pop, pop, pop of either grenade launchers or small arms. That's the first sign of any kind of physical ground engagement that we've heard or seen from here, the center of Kharkiv. But it is a city of 1.5 million people. It does have a ring road around it. On that ring road, the Ukrainian government forces claim earlier on today that they knocked out 4 tanks on that road. We don't have any independent confirmation for that, but we've seen the missiles fired from Belgorod, only 50 miles north of here. We've certainly felt them landing. We've felt some of the concussive power of those long-range missiles landing here. And of course, Fred Pleitgen has been reporting on the movement of heavy armor. That's tanks and the 155 mobile howitzers across the border from that location, which is only 25 miles up the road due north from where I'm standing, Jim. And all of this coming at a time when similar levels of pressure are being put on Kyiv, the capital, with the capture or fighting over airfields there, threats to the capital, threats to the second largest city, combining to lead President Zelensky to appeal to his citizens to take up arms, whoever they might be. This is how he put it earlier on today.
We are issuing arms, defensive weapons, to all those capable of defending our sovereignty. Each citizen of Ukraine will decide the future of our people. Anyone with military experience who is able to join the defense of Ukraine must report to stations.
Now, the critical thing there from the Ukrainian and the Russian perspective is, can the Ukrainians break the momentum of this Russian air war and any advance they might be making overnight on the ground? If they can be stopped, if they can be held, then this war takes on a very different dynamic, one that doesn't necessarily play well to either side and could lead to even more civilian casualties, Jim.
Well, Ukrainians facing just enormous odds. They're outnumbered by many multiples, we are told. Sam Kiley, please stay safe there. Let's go now to Russia. Vladimir Putin warned that any country that tries to interfere with his plans in Ukraine will face consequences he says they've never seen before. It was quite a threat. CNN's Nick Robertson, he's live in Moscow with that part of the story. Nick, do we know who he was threatening and exactly what with?
The implication would seem to be NATO as is made recently NATO his biggest enemy in this current situation. It's NATO's projection of force, he says, that's led to the insecurity that he feels in Russia. He hasn't been precise in what he is threatening, but I think it's very clear that those joint military exercises that he had just over the past weekend, where he was testing out his nuclear missiles, his ballistic missiles, his hypersonic missiles, his cruise missiles, were all intended to send a very clear message of what he is capable of. And his message isn't only for the international community. There is a message from the government authorities here today telling Russian citizens not to go out and protest because it could have legal consequences, that there could be they could be found criminally responsible if they go out and join anti-war protests. Indeed, the government went on to spell that out. Somebody with a criminal record could find their future life made more difficult. That was the message from the government authorities to Russians internally, not to hold anti-war protests. Nevertheless, there have been protests across this country in many cities: Moscow, St. Petersburg, Perm, to the east and the west of Moscow, other cities. Dozens, we understand, have been arrested at those protests so far, Jim.
That's a brave thing to do in that country. You can pay a heavy price for it. Nick Robertson, thanks so much. And Kate, I will say that just in this last, well, it's less than 24 hours, how this country has changed. It was peaceful for so many days. You might even say defiant, somehow going on with life as normal. It's changed. You have people trying to leave this country. You have people trying to save their lives by hiding in bomb shelters and subway stations. It's quite a different reality.
Absolutely. Jim, thank you. We're going to get back to Jim in just a couple minutes. Thank you, Jim.